So what do you get when you take Deep Rock Galactic's low poly aesthetic and then throw in more gun? At long last, Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core is finally here. It's playable to the public, and anyone that's seen either of my previous videos knows that I've been waiting on this game for ages. I've always been a Deep Rock Galactic enjoyer for years at this point, but I've never really been an addict for one simple reason. I've always treated it as a really nice game to relax at the end of an exhausting day. However, I always wished I could play a mode with a bit more shooting and a few less chores, if you catch my drift. Imagine my excitement when I saw this, which was basically the answer to all my prayers. Right off the bat, I can confirm that it's everything I wished it was, and a little bit more, in both very good and moderately bad ways. I'll get to that later in the video. For now, let me point out for the DRG players, Deep Rock Galactic, but a bit less chory, a bit more shooty, is a pretty decent way of looking at what this game is trying to be. For anyone that might not be a DRG player, maybe just like a regular FPS player or a roguelite player, Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core is a new 1 to 4 player co-op class-based roguelike FPS set in the Deep Rock Galactic universe that calls upon art style, game feel, and lore setting of DRG while diverging from its predecessor enough to make it a unique enough experience for there to be two separate target audiences between both games. Anyone that enjoys the core systems like movement, shooting, mining of one of them will likely enjoy the core systems of the other, even if that doesn't extend to the rest of the objectives in each mission and the mission structure itself. DRG Classic is more objective orientated, with there being many different mission types which dictate what the player does within each deployment. Rogue Core, however, only has a single primary objective that's the same across every deployment that exists, as far as I can tell. Destroy the gatekeeper that lies at the very bottom of the mission locations. That's it. That's the main objective. That's the win condition for every mission. Now, like DRG, there are some bonus objectives for every mission that you can complete on the way to the main objective. However, in Rogue Core, they give you more than just XP and credits, the latter of which doesn't even exist in this game. The large bonus objectives in this game are called Expenite events, and as their name suggests, completing them will reward the player with a resource called Expenite, which ties into the main gameplay loop of Rogue Core. I mentioned earlier that this game is a roguelite, and like other roguelite FPS games, is a cycle of randomly generated upgrades and gear that the player can choose between as rewards for completing parts of the game. In other titles, that threshold is usually just clearing a room or defeating opponents. Those might give you upgrades to certain stats, or drop random weapons, or let you upgrade those weapons or character abilities, or just give new perks entirely. In Rogue Core, neither of those things will actually give you any upgrades within the mission itself. Doing damage to enemies does give you XP, which is important long term, but we'll get to that later. The way to get new weapons and new class perks is by completing some smaller bonus objectives that are generated once per floor, and the way to get the oh-so-familiar roguelite type upgrades is by acquiring Expenite and depositing it into the automated drone that follows you around all the time, which is named the RAPD. Let's talk about the former first. Your first weapon will come from the RAPD unlocking a crate in the safe room that you visit after deploying into a mission, right before delving into the actual cave. You'll be allowed to choose a grenade here too after completing a few missions. Further weapons and perks come from points of interest that spawn on every single floor. The Workbench will allow you to either acquire a new weapon to place into one of your 2 weapon slots, or upgrade any weapon you own, or a trait about your character. Could be a couple charges of an ability, or longer duration, or making one of the abilities stronger, etc. For players that have either not acquired a second weapon yet in the run, or if you just really enjoy using one weapon, only having that one weapon in your inventory will give you 50% extra ammo for that weapon that you can hold. Although that will mean that every time you gather ammo, it will still only be filling half of that ammo of that one weapon. You don't get to fill that weapon's reserves just because you don't have a second one. The Bio Booster is the other structure that, like the Workbench, spawns on every floor, and this one allows you to pick from one of 2 perks that it rolls at random, pulled from the Bio Booster decks for the class you're playing. Rather than being modifications to the abilities and stats you already have, it gives you some abilities that you didn't have before. Because these are class specific, they're basically guaranteed to synergize in some way with the build you're likely going for in a mission. For example, with the Guardian, the class built for keeping enemies at bay with a barrage of flak that stuns targets and a literal repulsion field around the character, he can receive cards that increase the radius of that field, or any other AoE effect that he possesses, or add the capability to stun to his regular weapon damage rather than just his ability. There's also the Slicer, who lives up to his name by being the melee-centric class with a dash to get up close and personal, and a Plasma Blade to cleave through targets in front of him. He can receive cards to buff up his survivability in close quarters engagements, or to increase his damage to targets within melee range. Those 2 buildings are the way in which you'll be upgrading and boosting different aspects of your loadout throughout a mission. However, the way to actually bolster those upgrades even more is through Expenite, which can be acquired in a few different ways. I already brought up Expenite events, which are large structures that will also generate once per floor. You see a trend here. You can think of them as sort of like the light versions of the full game modes from the first Deep Rock Galactic, with the difference that their completion isn't required required to complete the level. These events will reward the player with a large amount of Expenite when completing them. Some of them give a steady amount as they are completed, others a large lump sum at the end. Most of them will also spawn swarms as they're running, so be sure that you and or your team are ready for that whenever you decide to start one. The other method, and probably the main way that you'll be gathering Expenite as you wander through the floors, is by mining it from the walls. Yes, we're still playing Deep Rock Galactic. Mining is still a core aspect of what you'll be doing. Just as dwarves mine nitra as the primary resource in DRG, they'll be mining Expenite in Rogue Core. This stuff generates abundantly around the caves, like on the walls, on the ceiling, just everywhere. Mining it will put it directly into your inventory, just like, well, all the other ores in DRG, and if your pockets are full, it'll drop into a tiny little oblong gem on the ground, smaller than the nitra, gold, and morkite crystals from the first game. There's also buckets left in or around random buildings that might contain a decent amount of this stuff too. So much so that if you just came off of mining a vein of it, it'll likely cap you out in terms of how much you can hold. In order to empty your pockets to make room for more and to actually receive the upgrades that you've worked so hard for, all of that above Expenite will need to be deposited into the RAPD. Call it to you with a button, which is much faster than Molly from the first game. Hold the interact key until all the Expenite in your pocket is transferred, and when the bar in the top right corner of the screen fills up, the RAPD will stay mounted and call everyone in the lobby for an upgrade. This is another place where the roguelite system diverges from other titles. Most other titles allow each member of the team to pick from their own randomly selected pool of upgrades without being able to affect or be affected by their teammates. In Rogue Core, this is called a negotiation. Every member of the team selects from the same pool of upgrades, one player at a time, no overlapping except for the health upgrade on the right side of the screen, which is present in every single Expenite upgrade. To alleviate some fears, the more players there are in a lobby, the more options there are to select from, so it's not the case that the fourth person just doesn't get to choose. There's also a pretty handy quality of life addition by the devs that allows you to passively communicate to your team which upgrades you might be interested in, even if no one uses text chat or voice comms. You can see everyone's mouse cursor on the screen, so you can see what they're currently hovering over. Plus, there's a heart button on every upgrade that can be used if someone later on in the line sees an upgrade that they would really like. Of course, it's still reliant on the people coming first to be gracious enough to let the latter players have the upgrades that they heart. Those are the primary mechanics that could be found in a mission, but there's a few other structures that are worth mentioning. There are small machines that, again, appear once a floor called data terminals that are accessible when the player has security override alpha at clearance level 2. Interacting with these and solving the little puzzle that pops up will display all the points of interest for that particular floor, workbenches, bio boosters, and the like. They also give a bonus to account progression by increasing the rate at which you gain enhancement chips for that mission. There are also security cameras that are sparsely scattered around the maps and rooms that can be picked up for the same bonus to enhancement chips. Munitions crates and armor crates will spawn at a random rate throughout the mission's floors. The former will provide any player that interacts with an active side of it 50% of the total armor and ammo for both weapons. But as already mentioned, only wielding one gun will not allow the player to receive 2 shares of 50% ammo for that gun. The armor crates, as their name suggests, will provide the player with only 50% armor, no ammo. Each of these structures will only have as many uses as there are players in the lobby. 4 players, 4 charges, 3 players, 3 charges. The one exception is with munitions crates in a solo game where you'll have 2 charges of ammo and armor, so you're able to fully restock every time you encounter one. Alright, now we're already a good bit into the video and I haven't even gotten to talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the core spawn in the room. Yeah, of course, this game is not exactly a walk in the park. This game is actually hard. There are monsters, tons of them, and not the bugs from the first Deep Rock, but core spawn, or core spawn. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure which one's right. But anyways, this is the type of enemy that was introduced to the original game back in June of 2024 and very much expanded upon in this sequel with many more variants within the same family, plus other factions, both new and returning. This game will be intermittently throwing various types of enemies at you as you trot along through the caves, completing the various objectives. The frequency and intensity of the enemy spawns will be dependent primarily on the depth of the mission you choose from the Ramrod. That's the name of your space rig, by the way. Subsequently, there are other factors like risk vectors that are selectable as you descend through the floors. You'll pretty much be fighting from the moment you step foot into the caves until you defeat the gatekeeper on the very last floor. There's a good bit of reprieve between enemy encounters on the lower depth missions, but they become much more frequent while also spawning more difficult enemy types in the higher difficulties. Adding on to that are swarms, which are, as the name suggests, sections of time where the game will send a massive amount of enemies after you for one or more reasons. The first reason would be the timer at the top left corner of the screen. Yeah, that diamond up there is a timer that slowly fills up with green as you just exist in the mission. As the green crosses one of these tiny little white dots labeled with a corresponding glyph, that's when the game will throw a swarm at you, which can last anywhere from a minute to 2 minutes and sometimes even 3 depending on how quickly or slowly you clear out the opponents. The faster you kill, the sooner you can relax. As you go down floors in a mission, there can be more than one timed swarm per floor, and they will also be more frequent in missions of higher depth, which is, if you haven't gotten that yet, it's difficulty. There are some other reasons why swarms can be provoked. I talked about the fact that they will occur during some Expenite events, but they will also appear after the elevator is activated, which is how you progress from floor to floor within a mission. And they can also occur if it takes too long to kill Sentinel Spectre, which is one of the enemy encounters that can be triggered via a risk vector to give you a reward. The very final and most severe way to activate a swarm is by simply taking too long for the mission. I haven't mentioned what happens yet when you run through the entire mission timer. It doesn't just fail the mission immediately, just like all the objectives in Rogue Core.
They're more like guidelines anyway.
But I gotta say, this one is a pretty strict guideline. After the entire diamond is outlined with green, the game will do anything in its power to make you dead by starting an endless swarm that also spawns extra invincible enemies called Reaper Worms that will grab you and insta-kill you if there aren't any teammates around to save you. Teammates including your trusty drone, Cooper. That swarm will last either until your entire team is downed and dead, or you somehow manage to make it onto the elevator and descend a floor. And I say somehow because remember how activating the elevator will start a swarm? Yeah, all swarms stack. You can see it with the red swarm symbol beside the timer while one is active. That means it is technically possible, albeit very unlikely, to have 5 active swarms at any given time. But I would imagine that most people will only have to deal with 2 at once, usually from like a natural swarm and an Expenite event, or the round ending timer plus the elevator swarm. With that said though, I would still advise people to try and keep an eye on the timer to avoid popping an Expenite event when a swarm is about to hit, and to make sure the elevator arrives before the endless swarm hits, because one swarm is already brutal enough, with them only getting harder and harder in higher difficulty missions. The very last enemy related topic is actually something I've already touched on a couple times: risk variables. These are the only modifiers that touch on the mission itself rather than your character or your equipment. Each time you progress downwards in an elevator, you're required to select a risk variable in the intermission between floors. Each one has a negative aspect, shown in red, and a positive bonus attached to it, shown in green. Both the positive and negative values of risk variables are permanent for the entire mission, so make sure you're aware of them when you select the modifier that makes cave leeches spawn more often. But that also means getting the variable that decreases Expenite requirements by 15% for every upgrade early on is extremely beneficial across your entire run. So if you get a run where they both appear on the same variable card, maybe it's just time to train your gamer brain to look up every once in a while. Okay, let's summarize everything we know about the gameplay loop so far. You spawn into the Ramrod, which is the base of operations. Head to the mission terminal and select a depth, the other name for difficulty, and a mission. Deploy into the mission via the drop pod and use the REPD to receive your first weapon and the grenade you use for the rest of the mission. You head into the caves and start mining for Expenite and doing Expenite events in order to get upgrades, completing side objectives like restoring the workbench and unlocking the bio booster in order to make your character stronger, while picking up various bonus items like cameras and downloading data from terminals to receive more rewards at the end of the mission. You continue along the cave while following the elevator cable that leads from the previous elevator you took to reach this floor all the way to the next one and activate it to start calling it to you. Defend it from the oncoming swarm until it reaches your floor, hop on, and select a risk variable in order to move on to the next floor. You rinse and repeat until you reach the last floor where there's going to be no more elevator cable and you just have to walk all the way to the boss room in order to fight the boss. Now, speaking of boss, I haven't actually talked about how to kill them yet. Each boss in the game right now spawns the same way. Or at least I think they do, because I haven't actually gotten to meet every single boss in the game yet, and heck, I've only ever gotten the second one a single time. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's that some bosses only spawn at certain depths, but just so you guys know, the info I'm about to give applies to the Deep and Molochtula bosses. I haven't even met the third one. Upon entering the boss room, there's going to be 3 inactive core stones around a central pylon floating above a pit. Interacting with all 3 will spawn the boss on the location of the pylon. Shooting the boss won't bring down its health directly, but will chip away the shield that appears to be protecting the boss's true 3 health bars. Once the shield is fully gone, one of the gate stones will be kicked away, or it'll shatter into pieces in the case of the Molochtula. Dumping the core stone, or all the pieces of it, into the pit where the boss spawned will completely remove 1 of the 3 health bars from the boss. You repeat that for every stone, and that's it. There's no extraction, there's no drop pod you need to reach. The mission will just end right where you're standing, and it'll show you the reward screen for reclaiming the mine. And the rewards for this game are pretty simple. There's just XP for your class and then your account, which counts all the floors you reached, all the Expenite you deposited, and all the enemies you killed. That scales off the number of floors in the mission and the complexity of the caves. Then the second reward is enhancement ships that I mentioned earlier. And that's a great segue to our sponsor. And that's a great segue to talk about the Ramrod and what you can do in it. Other than housing the mission terminal, the Ramrod also has every other facility for long-term progression. You've got Operations Command, where you can unlock some cosmetics in exchange for scrip, which can be earned from completing tasks. Tasks and deployment also give merits, which can be used to unlock even more deployment slots, or enhancement tiers at the enhancement terminal, or enhancement slots for reclaimer classes at the loadout terminal, or ascend classes in the Ascension Hall when they reach max level, which happens to be level 15 for the first ascension, but that number goes up as you keep ascending. Enhancements themselves are unlocked using those enhancement chips that you get from the end of every mission, whether it's a success or a failure. Unlocking each enhancement costs as many chips as the tier that it belongs to, such as a tier 2 enhancement costs 2 chips. They can be equipped onto a character at the loadout terminal. At the very beginning, you'll only be able to equip a single enhancement onto any given class, but as you play more and earn more merits, you'll be able to purchase up to 7 more slots for every single class, for a total of 8 enhancements at once. Take note that you are able to equip more than one of the same type of enhancement. If you really want all 4 copies of Healthy or Unstoppable on at the same time, you can do that. This terminal also allows you to switch bio booster decks between classes after an ascension, and because they're swapping between classes, both classes need to be ascended in order to make that switch. There's also a display to the right that provides a written description and a short little video for all the abilities of each class. Now if you really don't like reading, then I'll just do it for you. As the spotter, you're able to single out targets with your crit dart, exposing their weakness for a greatly increased crit chance. The crit dart by itself has 3 charges. Activating the ability will fire the dart, hit scan at whatever you're aiming at. Directly hitting an enemy will mark it and it alone. Hitting the floor will create an area around the impact point that will mark any enemies that pass through it, with the mark lingering for a tiny bit after it leaves the area. Marked enemies suffer a 100% crit chance bonus on any incoming damage. Now is a great time to note that crit chance actually stacks beyond 100%, which gives you the chance of dealing multiple crits to an enemy with a single instance of damage. Your other ability is called the Ranger's Pocket. This is a single-use, non-recharging ammo box that will refill 50% of the ammo of whoever uses it. Resupplying from an ammo crate will restore the ability charge, so it's always good to throw it down before resupplying ammo as a whole. The Spotter is also the only class with a passive scanner, which provides you with a radar at the bottom center of your screen. This will display teammates and enemies regardless of line of sight on the radar every 4 seconds. Activating the scanner will perform a directional sonar scan that outlines enemies and supplies for the entire team for 10 seconds, with a 24-second cooldown between activations. As the Slicer, you move up close to your enemies and slice them. Yeah, that one's pretty simple, isn't it? Your namesake ability, the Slice. Activating this will swing the plasma blade across your screen, dealing massive melee damage to anything in a horizontal line in front of you. This has more range than your pickaxe and the ability to ignore armor. The Slice is extremely handy when caught in a pinch with little ammo in your magazines. Your second ability is the Blitz, which is just a dash with a fancy name. Activating it will dash in whatever direction you're looking, with a 6-second cooldown between casts. Your third ability is a Shield Belt, which can be activated to generate a force field that follows in front of your player that will destroy any projectiles that come into contact with it. This shield lasts for 15 seconds and has a 90-second cooldown between activations. Keep in mind, this does nothing to stop enemies walking straight through it, and if you yourself walk close enough to an enemy, they'll just be able to shoot you from behind the shield. As the Retcon, you have the ability to rewind your own personal time, allowing you to act without taking responsibility for any consequences. By the way, that does not apply to teammates. Your first ability is to rewind time. Activating this ability initially will save your current state in time and place and start a clock that will slowly tick down at the bottom of your screen. When that clock runs out, or when this ability is reactivated manually, you'll rewind back to that initial position and all of your armor, health, and ammunition will be restored to what it was when you saved that state. The caveat is that if you go down while time rewind is active, it will cancel the ability as a whole instead of rewinding. This ability has a 75-second cooldown between activations. Your other ability is Rage. As you take damage, you'll slowly build up Rage, which can be seen as the ability icon filling up. Once it's full, activating it will provide 100% damage and 30% pickaxe speed for 12 seconds. This ability technically doesn't have a cooldown, so you can activate it as many times as you want once it wears off if you happen to be taking enough damage to keep filling up the meter. The Retcon also has a contingency plan. Literally. This is a once per mission passive that will allow you to resurrect with full armor and health after every single player on the team has gone down, giving you a chance to save the run in case of emergency. As the Guardian, your position is at the center of any battle, keeping the enemies at a safe distance. You possess 2 ability charges, which are used to activate 2 out of your 3 abilities. Your first ability is your Concussive Barrage. You're able to fire a volley of 12 bombs that inflict major armor damage and stuns any enemy hit for 6 seconds. This ability costs a single charge. Your second ability is your Repulsion Field. Activating this will immediately spend 1 charge to deploy a field around your character that pushes back smaller enemies. This field lasts for 4 seconds. However, it will automatically burn a second ability charge if you have one ready to extend the field duration by another 4 seconds. You can avoid this extension if you just toggle the ability off before it spends that second charge. Your third ability is an armor beacon that can be planted on the ground. This then creates a sphere with a 6-meter radius around it that lasts for 15 seconds and restores up to 50% of the armor of any reclaimer standing within its area of effect. This final ability doesn't use a charge, but is instead gated by a 2-minute cooldown every time it's used. As the Falconer, you always have your trusty shock drone at the ready that you can send out to damage and electrocute a specific target. Activating the shock drone will deploy it to attack any target that you're looking at with electric and explosive damage, or patrol the area looking for targets. Reactivating the ability will call the drone back to your arm mount, where it will then slowly regenerate its 5 attack charges. Looking at a downed teammate while activating the drone will let the drone itself revive the teammate without you needing to interact with them, keeping you in the fight while getting your teammate back into the action as well. Your other ability is a Thunder Rod that can be planted on the ground to create a sphere with an 8-meter radius around it that provides any player standing within its area with 100% electric damage. The rod lasts for 15 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown every time it's used. Now, there's a small little isolated module over here on the right side of the Ramrod called the Gauntlets, and these are basically endgame missions that kind of mirror the normal ones where you have to dive deeper and deeper in a mine via an elevator, but rather than needing to defeat a gatekeeper, it's a timed kill race instead. The elevators only unlock when the team reaches a certain number of eliminations, with a bonus upgrade station on the next floor if you reach a second kill threshold. I don't have footage for this mode because, as you can see, I don't have an Ascension yet. When I do, I'll put some footage in the description down below, but you can already see the rewards for this mode behind the giant red text even if you don't have it unlocked. The very last things to talk about, and what honestly might be the most important for a section of the player base, the character customization. Both segments on the other side of the mission terminal deal with customization, the tall one with your character and the other one with your pickaxe. You can access the cosmetic sheet from the operations command here at the character customization as well, and this is where you'll equip the things you unlock from that sheet. Each unlock is specific to a character, so to have, say, 1 beard for every single class, you'll have to unlock that beard 5 separate times with 5 script in total. If you'd like to randomize any or all the cosmetics on a certain class, you can do that with the dice next to each slot or on the bottom right beneath all the boxes. Same deal for pickaxe customization. You're able to have 1 unique pickaxe for every class. Although as of now, there aren't really very many pickaxe parts, so I just have the same one for all my reclaimers. Oh, and I think that's it. I think that's everything to talk about with Rogue Core. For now, that is. This game is still in early access after all, with a roadmap that's visible on their Steam news page. I've had a little bit of time to make a bit of progress in the game, and I definitely have a few complaints about certain things I've come across. And it does look like I'm not alone. They've already addressed the big 3, as they've dubbed it, and these are basically like they're the exact same things that I've noticed, especially when playing with random lobby instead of alone. First of all, the timer I mentioned, is actually quite short. Maybe it's me having a skill issue, but I feel like it's really difficult to complete all the side objectives on the floor and then reach the elevator and fully defend it before having that endless swarm kick in. This gets a bit worse with multiple players if not everyone's locked in and focused, because the timer will scale with the number of people in the lobby. More players, less time. Secondly, the fact that everyone in a lobby has to negotiate over Expenite upgrades instead of being able to pick the same one means that as soon as you get a teammate that either is unaware of that fact or just doesn't care about the other people in your lobby, or just doesn't understand that certain upgrades work better on certain classes or builds, it can kind of ruin the experience for everyone else that might have certain builds in mind. The third thing they've listed here is the ammo economy, and yeah, again, I agree. It's excruciatingly common to run completely out of ammo in both weapons when playing in co-op, rather than solo, because you rarely ever get to fully restock on your ammo, and since you also don't have Cooper helping you fight, so you need to use more of your bullets. And because of how useful they've actually made Cooper compared to Bosco in the first DRG, I feel like it's really easy for Cooper to just be more effective than an average player when it comes to both combat and mining, especially because Cooper can get Expenite upgrades alongside yourself. Since Cooper just follows you around all the time, you can never die to cave leeches, you can never die to Reaper worms, you can give him stunning capabilities via upgrades, and he has a rocket launcher that does a massive damage at the things that he's shooting at. He can mine things that are high up, he can mine things that are in walls, he can bring you large objects pretty quickly. He's just just really, really useful compared to a player that with these 3 pain points stacked on top, it really incentivizes people to play solo rather than co-op in this co-op roguelike FPS, which is obviously a little bit weird. I don't know how they're going to go about fixing it. I really hope it doesn't actually involve making the solo play worse, because if I know I'm tired after a long day, I don't want to be a burden to 3 other players, so I'm just not going to join a lobby, right? I don't want to drag them down. I really, really like right now being able to load into a solo match, and all I want to do is chill, not have to be beholden to other players in my lobby. If they somehow nerf the solo play, I feel like I would just not play when I feel like that. I think the negotiations are the most difficult part of the big 3 to solve, because that's a pretty big, like, that's a core part of the game, right? That's a main thing with the systems. However, I think with the other things, I think it'd be nice to see the timer relaxed a little bit more, and maybe either more ammo crates spawn in the map, or some easier way to get ammo capacity upgrades rather than gambling on getting a risk variable that isn't even guaranteed to spawn in a run, or just, I don't know, make the ammo crates restore all your ammo instead of half. I don't think that would break the game too much. I'm just saying. All in all though, I wouldn't be putting this much effort into a video if I didn't think this game was freaking phenomenal. Like, it's so fun. It's so satisfying. I already said at the very beginning that I love Deep Rock Galactic, and a big reason why is how great it feels to blast apart the bugs that just come hunting you down every once in a while. The mining is, of course, very nice. The ting 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 from all the nitra never really gets old. But man, just to have a DRG game be mainly about the shooting, I never thought we'd be here, but here we are. I can't wait for them to add some of the stuff that they've already written out on the roadmap. More weapons, a reroll system for negotiations, that'd be pretty nice. And maybe hopefully for the weapon crates and workbenches too, because right now it's actually really difficult to get any particular weapon that you're looking for. There's just a lot of stuff. And I know early access carries with it a bit of stigma, but I have faith in Go Ship Games, because honestly, I think they have a pretty decent track record. If you guys have stuck around for this entire video, man, they've really been getting longer and longer, haven't they? I don't know how it keeps happening. I'm not doing it on purpose, I promise. There's just a lot to talk about with these games. Like especially Rogue Core. It's a big one. But yeah, thank you. You guys are staying awesome. I'm sure if you're here after 20 minutes, then this video is at least somewhat useful to you, so I would really appreciate it if you like this video, then leave a like on it. If you like the way I do things here, then feel free to subscribe if you think I deserved it. If you want to be notified whenever I come up with a new video, then you can hit that bell right after that subscription button as well. I promise I won't spam you guys. You can tell it takes me a little bit to upload because, dude, script writing is hard. Alright, just like in Far Far West, I'm just going to put an unlisted playlist in the description down below with a bunch of full mission runs. No commentary. If anyone wants to watch a full run before deciding whether this title is worth a shot or not, it'll be down there. That is about it for this one. All you guys watching, y'all better stay safe. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time.